Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi yassir wa la tuassir wa tammim bil khair ya fattahu ya lima wa bika nasta'een. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Listeners, welcome back to another episode of Connect with the Quran. And inshallah, today we will be looking at Surah Nisa, just the very beginning of it. And so, inshallah, we'll just listen to the recitation of the first ayah of Surah Nisa. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا.
Welcome back. And so let me just read you the translation of this first ayah, and then we will go into a bit detail connected with Al Imran, Surah Baqarah, and the way forward on it. Just give you an overview of it. So it says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind, revere your guardian Lord who created you from a single person, created of like nature his mate, and from them scattered countless men and women. Fear Allah, through whom you demand your mutual rights, and revere the womb that bore you, for Allah ever watches over you. So some of the key words I'm going to look at is Raqib was the last word. Taqwa comes up a few times. But before I get into that ayah and go into a bit more detail of that, I just want you to connect with how the Quran, as we've looked so far, has Madani surahs and Makki surahs, or Makki surahs and then Madani surahs. And the base difference of these two is that the Makki surahs were those that came in the first period of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life before the Hijrah, and the Madani were thereafter. Now, whether in Medina there were times when he was out of town, even when he was out of town, all the way up to Tabuk, at Uhud, at Badr, other places, but they are all considered Madani surahs because it's referring to the era, to the time phase of this latter part of his life, and that has a significance of how the surahs. What they have. So one of the things we've talked about it before about the, taking things in bullet points and seeing it that it's got Tawheed, Risala, Akhirah, and try and notice what ayahs have to do with what. But it's also important. Why I'm bringing up the Makki and the Madani surahs is because there is the first group that would be considered as a group of surahs together is these four very long surahs. Surah Baqarah, Surah Al Imran, now we're doing Surah Nisa, and then we'll be doing Surah Maida. And it all started with a Makki surah, which was Surah Fatiha. So very short surah, but really very powerful and very jami. They say it's got a lot of detail in it. So after that one short surah, we've got these four long Madani surahs. Why is that important? Because historically it places it. Now, just to go back, when we did Surah Baqarah, the second half of it was giving directives to the Muslims of how they should be in a fledgling society, because it's an early Madani surah that the community is being formed, so how they need to be. So from that second half of Surah Baqarah, we are connecting Surah Nisa that will go more into the application and rules of how society needs to be formed. The first thing Surah Nisa looks at is the most vulnerable. So that's what's going to come up. But I just want to do my recap of how it links to the surah. Surah Baqarah and Al Imran went as a pair, and we had a commentary in Surah Baqarah of pre-Badr, Battle of Badr. So that was before of what's coming to you. And then in Al Imran, we had post-Uhud commentary. And the beautiful thing was there was one ayah which talked about the shaheed, of how it's saying that this is in Surah Baqarah, ayah 53, 54, that don't say that the shaheed are dead. No, they live, but you are not aware of it. A similar ayah, which I'm not going to read out, is in Al Imran, post Badr. And there it says the same thing, but he said, don't even think that those who have been martyred, who have been shaheed in the battle of Uhud, are dead. No, they live min indillah, from the company of Allah. Why is that significant? It's this is the beauty that I want to bring out of the Quran. That before it was battle, you might have losses, you might do something, but it was just enough. Don't say that about them. They live, but you don't know. Okay. Here further on in Al Imran, it compares and it tells you a bit detail of how they're in Jannah, what they're expecting, how they know other people are going to join them. So there's all that beautiful passage. We haven't done it before, but I'm just bringing it now to the fore to show you how Allah at different moments, at different strategic times, what is it enough to tell you? There, La tasharun, you don't know that, and later it's don't even think of saying it. So this is how, so Surah Nisa links more to the second half of Surah Baqarah, which was giving directives, which was giving Sharia applications, and there were different things about inheritance, about divorce, about feeding the baby, about different things, and I'm not saying it in chronological order, but these were all strands that were then knitted together to make a beautiful bouquet of what all the rulings were. In brief, in Surah Baqarah. In Al Imran, in Surah Nisa, we are going to take it a bit further, and we are looking at it, like I said, to the vulnerable, the first, but the very first ayah we will look at it in a bit more detail. And we will see how taqwa is mentioned twice, how raqib, the one who holds your neck, is mentioned there, and how all humanity actually comes from one source. So the beautiful thing, and then now to link Nisa with Surah Al Imran, is the ending talked about how if you are in taqwa, that's the result. This is in ayah 200 of Al Imran. And with that, here in Surah Nisa, we are picking up the concept of, O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah, who created you from a single source, and from where they went on. So first it says, ittaqu rabbukum, and have taqwa of your Rabb, and we will get into the detail of Rabb too. But I'm still wanting to just give you how it links with the previous surahs. And the second half of Surah Nisa talks more on, so we have this new Madani society, and the most vulnerable are the women, the orphans, and they say the orphan girl is the most vulnerable. So that's what comes up in the surah very early on. Then it talks about legislatives of inheritance for women, that's where it's given. And in fact, there was a hadith to the effect that this person, he came to the Muslims and he said, soon you're going to be, really giving everything away, because you're telling us that now women are also entitled to have inheritance. So these topics come up. I'm not going to go in a great detail of all the legislative laws. They are there. There's so many tafsirs there for you to look it up on. But it was linking, I wanted to link Surah Nisa back to Surah Baqarah in some manner, and then in Surah Nisa also going back, it's called dovetailing sometimes, where Surah Nisa, Al Imran ends. There on the same topic, taqwa was mentioned, so here we have Nisa being mentioned again. Nisa in Surah Nisa at the very beginning, we have this being mentioned. And then in Surah Baqarah, we mentioned the good, the bad, and the ugly, as the ugly being the munafiq. But whenever Allah mentioned them there, and mostly whenever the munafiqs are mentioned, they still fall within the ambit of being Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu, those who believe, because that's what they declare. It's just that the hypocrisy lies within them. But so in Surah Baqarah, it was just touched upon briefly what those characteristics are. Here, for a good long period in Surah Nisa, the munafiq are dealt with for longer, and in about 60 ayahs they mention. Why? Because it's a fledgling society, and you need to nip it in the bud immediately, the corruption. And we all know about new countries that come up and they get liberated, and the first casualty that happens in them is that if you get corrupt people up in government, and then you've lost the plot. So you've worked so hard for this freedom, you've worked so much to get there, and yet it's the corruption that drives you. So that is one of the core undermining ways of a system, that you have this beautiful system wanting to come up, and then that's what hits you. So corruption is in today's terms, but for the fledgling Muslim Islamic city-state government that was coming up, which is forming now, of which the legislatives are given in Nisa, that's where you have to try and nip it in the bud and try to recognize. The other beautiful thing in our faith is, from that time, yes, they were talking, but for us to start labeling each other and calling each other that we are munafiq, it doesn't work. We need to know, and this is the beauty of the Quran. Always look back to yourself. Have I got any of those traits? Have I got a trait that, when a munafiq, he swears, he promises, he doesn't fulfill the three major characteristics that epitomize what a munafiq is. So those things are also going to be mentioned, but in the beginning in Surah Baqarah, it was just mentioned in passing. Here now we're getting more into the building up the city-state, and that's what's in Surah Nisa. In Surah Maida, and also the fact that it's Nisa, it's the basic unit of a family that starts with a man and woman and their children and so on, and how the concentric circles become bigger and bigger and so on. So here, let's say, it's looking at it at a micro level, this surah, of how to set up a society and a community. And in Surah Maida, we're going to be looking at how, at a government level, at the macro level, of how governance should be and what happens at that level. So that's what's going to cover in Surah Maida, and I'm already just linking you there of how Surah Nisa and Maida then make a pair. So this whole long intro was to show you that after Surah Fatiha, Al Imran and Surah Baqarah and Al Imran go as a pair, and now Surah Nisa and Maida will go as a pair. So we will pick up then now this very first ayah just after this. I'll just get into those details, but for now let's absorb this, and if you want to open your Quran, but look for it for yourself 90%. I'm just showing you a bit of highlighted moments of what I think you should truly know about. So we're just going to go for a short break, and then inshallah when we come back we will get into the ayah. So assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, and we'll be looking at Surah Nisa. And actually not the whole of Surah Nisa, I'm just going to concentrate on the very first ayah to give you a snippet. A couple of things I'd like to say before. This ayah, I love this very first ayah because it's the ayah that's used in the khutbah of nikah. And the wedding and the marriage khutbahs, this is what they invariably read. So it's a beautiful thing for all new people who are coming into marriage when they read the sermon and they read whatever they read at the nikah, for you to know this is the ayah that is read for nikah. And it's significant, a couple of beautiful things. The fact that it starts with Ya Ayyuhan Nas, the surah, and this ayah. The very first thing is, oh mankind. So it's not just saying, nikah and all these good things of joining husband and wife. It's not just exclusive to Muslim. It applies to everybody. So the surah, that's what my take-home message is. There's more meaning to it, and we'll get into that also, because it's all mankind it's talking about, that you came from one source. And that's linking it to another level. But anyway, it says, O mankind, have taqwa of your master, the one who created you from a single nafs. Now, nafs, the components of us is nafs and ruh, and one day we'll get into those things also. But nafs is a life-giving thing. Sometimes they translate as soul, sometimes as this or that, whatever it is. But it's a here is a bit of grammar for you, is nafs is a female. So further on now, when it's going to give you the detail of it, it's going to refer as the single soul, the single person, as the naf, because it's going to be translating nafs, that you came from a single naf. When they say it in Arabic, it's going to use the feminine ha, that you were at the ending of that word will be in the ha form, and that is because it's referring to the nafs. So, and I'm just giving you that much for you to go in and look it up, read that ayah, and see what is it referring to. So that's what it says, that you come from a single soul, from a single person, however it is, it's from a single nafs. And this is the beauty also. Try and stay as much as you can with the Arabic. Okay, so it's nafs. And it says, what does it say? And that's why I'm leaving it. Oh, mankind, have taqwa, ittaqullah. Ittaqullah, and it's in a verb, it's in a imperative, it's giving you a command. That's what you should do. You should have taqwa of your ittaqu rabbakum. It's of your Rabb. And have taqwa of your Rabb, the one who created you. And as soon as you say Rabb, this is what's come up in the first bit, is that He's the nourisher, the sustainer, the one who allows your best potential to come. So there's a lot of mercy and love incorporated when it says, ittaqu rabbukum. So, oh ya yuhannas, ittaqu rabbukum. And then when it says, when Allah talks about creation from the one soul, what the implication on society is that you all came from Adam alayhi salam, from the one, and you came by the mercy of the Creator. Then what comes, we are told when we are single source, but we are different people, different tribes, it comes, further up in different surahs it comes, but it's all from Adam alayhi salam, from which and so the only thing that distinguishes us as human beings is obviously what we say Iman, Islam, and it's about taqwa. So it's right there, it's taqwa which is the distinguishing factor between goodness and badness. Otherwise we have no racism, black, white, pink, purple, whatever color we are, from wherever we are, whatever stature we have, tall, short, this or that, there's no racism. And He created from that soul His spouse, and when it says He created from, that's why it's better to say that soul, because when He created from it, it doesn't say from him, He says from ha. That's the key thing there too. And so it doesn't say minhu, which would mean it comes from him. It's saying minha, the feminine, because the nafs is feminine, and in Arabic the nafs is feminine. And just for you to know, ruh comes out as yasalunaka anir ruh qul ruhu min amri rabbi wa ma utitum bin ilmi illa qalila. That's all we are told about the ruh, and that's in the masculine form. So these things are significant to know. The grammar, and I'm just going to backtrack also a bit when it talks about Adam and Eve in heaven, and it says huma, the pronoun used is not the singular, it's not the plural, it's the dual. This is the beauty of the Arabic language. It's that they both slipped. So why are those things important? Because it's just, you don't stop blaming her or him, or it was him or it was her. It was the two of them together. That was what was significant from there. And from there we get, what's also important, what I'd like to go into is taqwa, because taqwa is mentioned twice. First it said taqwa of ittaqu rabbakum, of your master, of your Lord, of just the Rabb. Internalize the concept of Rabb. The second time it says ittaqullah. It says of Allah, and we'll see why. I mean, try and notice these things in the Quran. Why is this sudden difference? Why is it? I wouldn't notice at all unless you do a bit of more grammar, a bit something. But if somebody highlights it to you, it's significant. And this is those beautiful wow moments of how deep the Quran is, and it's just so simple. It's just said in one word, but there's great depth in it. So anyway, from the root of taqwa is, and you would think T has something to do with it, but no, it's actually waw, qaf, and ya, and waqaya. And it comes in the Quran 258 times in all its derivative forms. And the noun taqwa actually comes in 17 forms, but as a verb, and all these details you can want to know or not know, it comes as a verb of a form 8 type. And this is the way ittaqu it comes the most, and it comes at about 166 times in the Quran. So As a verb, it also means to protect, and that's where this is the beautiful thing. We get رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. That atina is also Allah save us, Allah protect us from, give us. So that comes in one form, and from that same root, this taqwa also comes. Again, strongly recommend that you read it yourself, because just glibly saying it one time, it doesn't necessarily register. But I'm hoping this excites you enough to say, wow, there's that much depth. Let me go and check it out. That's really the key purpose of wanting to connect you, is giving you these beautiful little gems sprawled out everywhere, and for you to take them further and then to really navigate within it and see what the rules are. So that was the ittaqu twice, and now also just look at how beautifully we have talked about the muttaqeen right in the beginning of Surah Baqarah, when it says Hudallil Muttaqeen. And who is the Muttaqeen? Then it gives you a bit of detail there. Then also when we went into the Ayatul Bir of Surah Baqarah, Ayah 177, that's also where there was mention of who are these people, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبْلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ, and it was muttaqin that was highlighted. But I'll get to that also. What I want to say there is that the common denominator is from Adam alayhi salam, and this is when you are doing dawah, when you're even talking about, we're getting into an argument, who's right or wrong. Listen, like in Surah Baqarah, we went very often into the concept of, let's just go back to Ibrahim alayhi salam, that he is the father of the nations of the three books that we have, the Yahud, Nasara, and the Muslims. So let's go back to him. And even with Ya Ayyuhan Nas, when we say to all people, whether they are people of the book or not people of the book, we all, however, come back to Adam alayhi salam. So from there, we bring that, so you have it there. When we say the first time it's Rabbuk, that you have taqwa of your Rabb, the second time when it says for Allah, it says, now if after knowing and recognizing that it's Allah who created you, you still don't come right, well then Allah is there watching you. Okay, so Allah is there looking at you. So and the beautiful thing of what it's saying about your families, your concentric circles of having, you ask each other for rights. So that there, when it says you ask each other for rights with Allah in mind, it's like saying, for God's sake, help me do this or something. So if we are God conscious, if we are aware of Him, if we have an idea that there's always akhirah we have to get to, then we will be much more in a position to do for somebody else, help, or even be comfortable in asking, because sometimes asking is not easy too. But we can say that when we have the taqwa of Allah, then those things also help. Just this one ayah is so profound of how it should help us make our relationships be better, and our relationships will only come right if we have taqwa of Allah, and that's what will help us take it further. But just try and absorb whatever has been said so far, and inshallah we will take it a bit further next time. But notice, just read this ayah and notice how much depth there is. If you can, please go and read up more on the tafsir, but this is as much as I would like to share with you just now, and inshallah take it a bit further next time, inshallah. So for now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.